Hi, this is Lauren Winkler demonstrating the web mapping application I developed for UW-Madison's Practicum in GIS Development course. What if you wanted to see where your ancestors lived? The streets no longer exist. What if you were a researcher who wanted to study a neighborhood, but it had since been replaced by a shopping center? How could you learn about your ancestors and their community? Who did they live with? Where did they come from? And what were their lives like? Imagine if we could use technology to recreate this community and learn about its residents. Imagine if there was a map that could bring all of your historical and genealogical data to life. For my Practicum in GIS Development project, I did just that, working alongside genealogist Tammy Hepps and using the Jewish community of Homestead, Pennsylvania as a pilot area. I created an interactive map of the digital directories of Homestead from 1890 to 1918, along with related genealogical data from Tammy's site, homesteadhebrews.com, that allows users to explore the people that made up this community. Homestead, Pennsylvania, located across the Monongahela River from Pittsburgh, is most known for its steelmaking heritage. For almost 100 years, the riverfront was dominated by steel mills. After the collapse of the steel industry, the mills were replaced with big box stores, and the area became a popular shopping destination. But long before the steel mills and retail, over 100 years ago, the Homestead riverfront was a residential area with a thriving Jewish community. Tammy has spent years developing a digital directory of the area's families, but since many of the streets no longer exist, this data was never shown on a map, until now. I developed a responsive interactive web map so Tammy and users of her website can visually examine the changing patterns of Jewish settlement in Homestead. When you first arrive at the map, you'll see Homestead as it appeared in 1890, when the first Jewish residents arrived. The residents are shown as points on the map, placed at their home address from the 1890 city directory, and color-coded based on their birth country. Red indicates someone from Austria-Hungary, yellow indicates someone from Germany, and white indicates someone whose birth country is unknown. You can click the legend icon in the lower right corner to see the full list of countries. You can also choose how you want to symbolize the residents. You can symbolize them by birth country, or you can symbolize them by profession. Let me go back to birth country for this demo. If you hover over a point, you can get more information about a resident or family from their home address. For example, if you hover over this yellow record, you'll see that this is Ralph Segelman, a jeweler who lived at 239 6th Avenue. When you click the record will be highlighted on the map, and more details will appear in the sidebar, including Ralph's birth year, detailed birthplace of Prussia, and age in this year. For more information, you can click the link to see all of what Tammy has collected about Ralph Segelman, including a link to everything she's collected on Ancestry.com. Going back to the map, you hover over a different record, you see that multiple people lived here in 1890. Click the record to get more information. Notice that 2 people lived here at 616 Heisel Street in Homestead in 1890, Samuel and Lena Markowitz, husband and wife. Click each person to get more information about them and zoom into the address. If you want to look up a specific person, you can use the Record Search tab, which is automatically displayed when you click a record. Type at least 3 characters to search for a person by name. In this case, let's search for Bernard Hepps. And click any of the results to get all of the directory records from 1890 to 1918 for that person. If you search for Bernard, you'll see that he started off as a laborer and moved up to become the proprietor of a saloon. This is one of many cases where you can see people realizing the American dream, starting off as laborers and working their way up to becoming business owners and managers. Click any of the records to get more information and zoom to a specific address. You can watch how this person moved around between 1894 and 1918. This Hotel Kossuth is Bernard Hepps' store. This is Tammy's great-grandfather. Oftentimes, immigrants lived above a store and worked their way up to single-family dwellings further up the hill in Homestead or in one of the surrounding communities. Such was the case for Hyman Little, who, along with his brother Ben, founded one of Pittsburgh's most well-known shoe stores. So you search for Hyman, type in the name, click his record. You can watch him start at Amity Street, close to the business district. And as his business became more successful, he was able to move to a single-family house, and then another single-family house further up the hill. If you want to look up a specific historic address, simply type in the first few characters into the address search box. If you want to search for This historic addresses section shows all of the addresses from all of the years where we have data available where residents live. So if you click on one of the records, the map will zoom to that historic address, even though that street no longer exists, and update the year in the map to the year of that record, in this case, 1896. So if you scroll with the opacity slider, you can see that there is no more 3rd Avenue, it's now Bridge Street, and it's a shopping center. But through the use of this map, you can find it. In addition to streets that aren't there anymore, this function is also helpful because address numbering changed. So this lets you find a location from an address, even though that address is something different now. If you aren't researching a specific person or a specific address, you can also use several tools in the site to better understand Homestead at large. The historic map that you see in the background is the Sanborn map from the closest available year. You can pan around to explore the streets, houses, and businesses of the Homestead community in that year. The Sanborn maps offer a wealth of information about the community as a whole. To better understand the colors, symbols, and abbreviations on the map, click the map icon to see a list of common abbreviations and the symbology key. And you can click the links here to get the full list of abbreviations and more information about Sanborn maps from the Library of Congress. To compare the historic map to today, simply drag the opacity slider and see the full Sanborn map at full opacity, or you can see the current map at full opacity. You can really clearly compare the Sanborn map to today. The greatest change is here in Lower Homestead, where this entire neighborhood was replaced with steel mills, and later the waterfront, which is why you see places like AT&T and Vitamin Shop and McDonald's. You can view today's Homestead as a grayscale map, or as a topographic map with some of the business names, or as aerial imagery. The Sanborns were previously only available as paper maps and digital image files. By georeferencing them, stitching them together, and publishing them on ArcGIS Online, I was able to bring them to life here in this site. One great way to explore the community at large is through the use of the time slider, either with or without the Sanborn maps. In this case, I'll turn them off. You can move through the time slider and see how Homestead's Jewish community moved from a few residents basically around the railroad tracks to a much larger community that really developed a large population in this part of town, which makes sense because the synagogue was on Ammon Street here. So as you go through time, the people move around, showing where the residents lived. Also, the street grid expands. So you can watch the streets go from this small little group of streets just around Homestead to this larger complex of streets in what's called the Homestead District. The site was developed in Leaflet, and data is stored in GeoJSON files. The site is based on boilerplate HTML and Bootstrap with user elements from jQuery and various Leaflet plugins. And the site is responsive and works on Android and iOS tablets. With this interactive map, you can find not only your ancestors, but their entire community. You can slide through decades with the scroll of a time slider and watch the whole community grow and change. When you rediscover where people lived, who their neighbors were, what they did, when and where they moved, you can gain an entirely new insight into the history of a community. This map is about Homestead, but the same concept can be applied to any community, anywhere in the world. Come along with us and let us uncover the history of your community.